Welcome to On the Bubble Podcast, episode 131. I'm your host, Basa J. With my co-host, Yuki Lee Bender. Today we're going to be doing an episode on a year-end wrap-up, essentially. We have a couple of questions lined up, and we're just going to go through it. It'll be a pretty casual episode. We're not going to be talking about anything new, but kind of what happened this year and the things we liked and the cards we liked and so on like that. But before we do that, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Do you do anything interesting for holidays?
Just like lots of typical visiting with friends. Had Christmas Eve dinner with my mom. It was just like a small gathering. That was nice. I don't know. Had people over and played Flesh and Blood. We had a cube one day, Midwinter Cube. That was fun. That's like Lexi, Icelander, Kano, Azalea, and then also had people over to play CC a different day. That yesterday, I guess. And that was pretty fun. It was fun to get like back into Flesh and Blood. I feel like things have been so busy that I haven't had that much time to really like sit down and play CC. And yeah, it was just fun to play a whole bunch of different decks and start to get a feel for the new meta. I guess this is not the main topic, but we won't really be touching on it. But I still don't really know what I'm playing for RTNs, much less calling Akiba, which is like a week. I leave in a week for that. It's a weekend. It's like 10 days away or something. It must be more than 10 days. It's about 10 days. It's like 12 days away. So yeah, I could be in a better spot preparation wise, but you know, it is what it is. I might just end up playing Verdants. And nothing else, I'll just play Verdants. I played a bunch of Verdants, and I think the deck is still pretty good, not that different. So I always have that like backup plan, I guess. And then I'm trying to see if there's something else I'd like to play more. So there's kind of like nothing that's really like super speaking to me right now in the meta.
Okay, so you don't have any like off-the-wall deck that like no one's heard of yet?
No, not right now. Maybe it will change by the time we get there, but I've just been trying the different decks, and I'm like, I feel like so many of the decks have something that they really don't want to see. Like, I don't really like playing Gravy into Kasai. I don't really like playing Verdance into Gravy. I don't like playing Mario into Gravy.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. There's a lot of like really polar strategies, or just like there are decks in the format that really shape what kind of decks you can play, and I feel like there isn't really a clear answer to like answer all the decks in the format right now. So we'll have to see. It's kind of feeling like maybe Slippy might have like a lot of the answers, or like at least tools to deal with most of the decks in the format, but that deck is still an assassin. So like if you're not prepared for the exact meta game, you can get kind of hosed because your cards are quite, how do I say it, not above rate, right?
Do you mean Slippy or Marionette?
Oh, Marionette. I meant Marionette.
Because I spent some time building Slippy, and it's been a while since I played a deck that I felt like that about, where I was sitting there, and there was like other people watching me play games with it, and then we're just like, what is Slippy's good matchup? And we're sitting there trying so hard to think of a matchup that's good for Slippy, and they're like, here, I'll play Marlin into you. Maybe Marlin's a good matchup for Slippy. And we play it, and we're just like, it's like playable. Like, it just feels like you get like a real game, and it's just like, this is like my best matchup. Like Marlin is like a playable game. Like, I don't know, just like I was just like, I don't really know why I want this deck. I lost to KO, who drew 0 Blood Rush Bellows. Like, it was grim. It's kind of crazy how you can play like basically all the same cards as before that deck lost Bonds, and it's just, your turns are so just okay, and you kind of keep the game like kind of close, but you're slightly behind, and you just like, it's just like, I need my turn, I need my like really good turn that pulls me ahead, and it doesn't exist. It's just like it's not in the deck, or I can't find a way to like put it in the deck without Bonds.
Yuki, you should try Huntsman. You have a great time. It's exactly like Slippy, but you get like 2 more life, and you lose your hero decks.
But I mean, Huntsman's like a little different. You're not really trying to play like a value game. You're trying to just like run them out of cards. I think I actually might believe in Huntsman more than Slippy right now. I think Huntsman is probably a better hero than Slippy.
That's kind of sick. That's a sick take. That's a sick take.
I think that like Fabberry's stats agree with me at the moment. I think Slippy's like one of the worst decks. He's like 40% win rate in the last 30 days. It's atrocious. Huntsman is 54% win rate.
Wow,
It's
that's
like worlds different. Like Slippy is like he beats like Tough Nut. Sorry, he has higher win rate than Tough Nut, Max, Teklo-Vossen, and Olympia. Like it's like, and he has like 1 to 2% higher than those decks. Like it is not, it is grim. Like I think Slippy is like one of the weakest heroes in the game, which is kind of crazy.
yeah, it is kind of crazy going from a spot where Slippy used to be like one of the top contenders at like the earlier PTs this year, right?
Yeah, PT Singapore. That was the second PT this year. Like that was in July. In July, yeah.
Yeah, it was a good deck back then. So, wow, one card can really change how powerful a deck is, right?
Yeah, kind of crazy.
Then, we also have a listener question from the podcast that we wanted to touch up on a little bit. But before we move into that, do you want to just do a Patreon shout out?
Yeah, let's do that. So, thank you to all of our patrons who give back to the show. We really appreciate you, and we couldn't be doing what we're doing without you. I know it's like always tough over the holidays, lots of things competing for your money and for your time and your attention, and so we appreciate you, you know, tuning in, giving back to the show, and to all of our listeners, really just making time to listen to the show without everything else going on in life. We really appreciate you. Um, Also, if you want to buy singles through a Canadian vendor, recommend Invasion. They sponsor us, and they are where I buy all of my singles. So you can find them invasioncnc.ca, and you can use code YLB5 for 5% off your checkout on all your singles, and that will also let them know that we sent you there and help support us as well. So keep that in mind if you're looking for singles. But yeah, thank you to everyone who helps us out.
If you are already a Patreon or just have access to the Discord, feel free to ask like questions and we will use them for the episodes because it's kind of tough to always have something to talk about all the time. Like even today we're just like, what do we talk about? And we're like, oh yeah, it's actually the end of the year, so we have something to talk about. But this question says, would y'all be willing to talk about best testing practices, like what you are looking for when testing a deck, plus testing certain matchups, and how to assess tech cards and micro/macro strategies. And that was from Eleanor. Thank you, Eleanor. And where do you want to start with this question?
Yeah, so I think we've talked a little bit about like we had a episode a little bit back. Maybe I can find the exact episode notes, but we talked a little bit about like how to test, how to find a group of people, and the value of a team in that. And I think this is like kind of related to that. And I think a lot of those things still apply. Where if you can test with goals in mind, test with people that you know and trust, that makes all of this easier because sometimes some of the challenges, like if you're testing on Talishar, maybe you're testing the, I don't know, Verdance matchup, but something that works into the Verdances, some of the Verdances on Talishar might not actually work against Verdances at your PQs, for example. So I think having like a way to quality control will help with basically all the things we're going to be talking about in this question. And so yeah, just wanted to kind of like shout out that idea of like practicing with people, finding regular testing partners is still really important, but there's like more to dive into here as well.
As you said though, having like quality testing partners is good, but there's also a lot of like big edges to be gained of just playing infinite number of games on Talishar too against just basically against anyone too, right? And I feel like I do know a bunch of people that like just jam 100 games with the deck on Talishar before they even start doing anything else with it.
Yeah, I think Talishar is at its best to learn. I think of it as like learning what my deck wants to do. Like I want to learn how to play my deck, understand the strategies that it wants to, use in a matchup, understand like what do my power turns look like, what are the cards I want to put in my arsenal, like all those basics of like understanding how to play my deck from my side are really important. And then I think as you get into the nitty gritty of specific matchups, more focused testing starts to become not that Talishar testing isn't still valuable, but it's like lower efficacy because you have some games that are valuable for testing strategies, and you have other games where it's like, well, this person lost like 8 points of value, and it kind of doesn't matter what strategy I did because they just left a bunch of value on the table.
I feel like there are a lot of strategies that would work on Talishar, but that doesn't work on against like really good or strong players. I think the most common one that I would see for that would be like if you try like a fatigue strategy. Typically, if you just like decide to block somebody out on Talishar, that would work a solid like probably like 80% of the time. If you just decided to block someone out who's playing an aggro deck, like I remember when Aurora first got introduced with the Armory deck on Talishar, if you queued into a random Aurora, if you just didn't attack them and only blocked, you would fatigue them like more than half the time without doing anything else. And that just wouldn't work on paper or against like a strong Aurora opponent at like a calling or something like that. But on Talishar, it feels like it'll work almost every single time, right? Like, and that's just like not a good data point to have because then you get into these like really weird habits of like trying this out at like a more important game and it just like completely backfiring on you.
Yeah, totally agree. So I guess kind of like to the first part of this question, what are you looking for when testing a deck in certain matchups? I think when I'm testing a deck, if it's early stages, I'm looking to make sure that the deck feels smooth. So I'm particularly paying attention to hands that don't feel good, like they don't, you do your value math on them, they don't convert. Maybe a hand where you don't have blues. That will always happen sometime, but I'm paying attention to how much that happens and how some decks are better at playing through hands that don't have blues than others, and that's like a thing to pay attention to as well. Like okay, like I didn't have like this wasn't the ideal hand. Aren't the combination cards I'm hoping to draw, but I was still able to convert it for like close to on rate value, and that's like fine. Versus like I did like a 4-card 6 or something. So there's degrees there, but yeah, I would test it as smooth, look for like problem hands, and especially if there's like cards that you're trying, you're like, I don't know, what do I replace Brand with Cinderclaw with in Syndra, and you're trying out different cards, I would pay attention to like when you draw that card that you're testing and see how it feels in those hands. And sort of, you could make a physical note of it, or you could just make a mental tally. And I just try to kind of keep a tally of like, how often was it good? How often was it bad? When it was good, how good was it? When it was bad, how bad was it? Because those often matter. If it's like, sometimes it's slightly awkward, but still mostly on rate. And then when it's good, it's like really good. That's really different than a card that's like, when it's good, it's like 1 point above rate. And when it's bad, it like bricks the hand. Like, I think, like Oath of Loyalty is a card that can be like this depending on how your deck is set up, where the upside is not that high and the downside is very, very high. But yeah, I think the best thing to do is like look for those specific cards that you're trying and look for those hand configurations. And I would say like just doing your value math on every hand, and just that helps you identify the weak ones and see if there's ways to smooth that out as sort of like the early stages of testing, at least for me. Do you agree with that?
I feel like that's like the most important part of testing any deck is to figure out which cards are good and which cards are bad. And in my opinion, I feel like if you do this, you already have a significant amount of edge compared to your local players at your PQs, your RTNs, things like that. And then like maybe you need to take a step further if you are trying to go to the or trying to do well at the PT. And I feel like even at the PT level, you're gonna have, a solid number of players that basically just do this before they go to the PT.
Yeah, I think this gets you quite far if you've like really spent your time, really tuned it, really kind of like weeded out as many of those weak cards that lead to awkward hands as possible. And then I guess there's this question about how you test certain matchups and tech cards. I often go into testing matchups just with kind of like my base plan of whatever it is my deck wants to do. Sometimes my deck wants to do like 2 different things, like let's use like Verdance. Sometimes Verdance wants to just play its normal, let's call it like tempo or like value plan, where you just keep hitting them and then you kill them with striders at some point. And then other times you're playing your combo plan, and those are kind of your two plans. So I might pick the plan that my deck has already built into it that I think would work best into the matchup, and then just play that without any tech cards whatsoever as a starting point, and just see how that feels. Sometimes it will already be good and you don't really need much tech for the matchup. And other times you might notice certain weaknesses or deficiencies, and that can be a time to start looking for tech cards. Sometimes you can look at other people's ideas. Maybe it's in their lists already. Like maybe you see Amulet of Echoes and you realize that's for Acilio, and you can so then the next step would be trying the matchup with those tech cards and say, well, how much does the tech card give me? How much, if I put 3 Amulet of Echoes in my deck, how much win percentage does that give me? And then you can make some kind of, I guess, judgment about, yes, it is worth putting 3 Amulet of Echoes in my deck based on how many Acilios I expect to show up and based on how much win percentage I think that will give me. Or maybe you put 3 Amulet of Echoes in and it gives you like 2% in the matchup, and you just go, well, I have better things to spend my sideboard slots on. So that's kind of how I would assess tech cards, is play with and without them. I usually like trying tech cards in large numbers so that you are more likely to draw them, and then you can pare down to lower numbers later. But I think just testing like full 3 copies is usually the best way to get a feel for a card. And you really want that comparison of no tech versus tech cards.
I feel like just to add a little bit to that, I wouldn't be too worried about your full-on 80 card deck size while you're testing. Just add the cards in and then worry about what to cut after you figure out if this card's even worth playing or not.
Yeah. A lot of people get stressed out about how do I fit it, and you can always find space to fit things. You might have to give up things in other matchups, and that's where things get really hard. Is you go, oh well, do I want points into Kano, or do I want points into Acilio, or do I want points into like all the aggro decks? But it's like, instead of getting like 20%, I'm getting like 5% into the aggro decks or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of like the really tough part, is figuring out exactly where you want your win percentage points and what you think is going to be the most beneficial overall. But I do agree that just try stuff out, and then you can figure out if you want to find space for it later, because there's no point retooling all the sideboard every time you make a change. Just figure out if the change is worth making in the first place, rather than spending all this time like messing with your 80, messing with your sideboard. Like it's a lot of energy that doesn't really like help you, I guess.
I'd rather be stressing on which tech card to cut than to figure out if the one copy of this card works or do I need 2 copy, blah, blah, blah. It's just like the first thing first, you need to figure out if, let's say, like Poison the Well is even worth playing against Verdance. Like that's step 1.
And sometimes it is the case that you'll like try a tech card and be like, that was pretty good. 3 felt like overkill. Like I felt like that card was pretty good. I didn't really need 3 of them. I'm going to try 2. And that's kind of like how you get to those more refined numbers. But just try it at 3 copies first. Because if you play 1, you just have this problem of like, you sit there, you play a 30-minute game and you don't draw the card. And it's just like, well, this was like not very useful. Whereas if you just put 3 in your deck, you're going to see it, and you're going to see it more often, and you're going to get more data points on it quicker in the matchup, basically.
I feel like one more thing about tech cards that's a little bit tricky is, I think Poison the Well was like a really good example against Verdance. Poison the Well wasn't actually that good into Verdance. What ended up happening was like the first time the Verdance player saw Poison the Well, it was really good into them. And then the second time or the third time they see Poison the Well, it was kind of actively bad against Verdance, is kind of like my initial impression on that card. So like you might want to try testing the tech cards against people who know about the test cards and who don't know about the test cards as well. And it does give you a pretty big difference. And I feel like maybe like the best example right now would have been Ripple Away with Slippy, where when they played Orb Weaver and you rippled away them and they didn't have a way to convert the Orb Weaver otherwise, it really destroyed their turn. You kind of just like won the game out of nowhere by playing this tech card. But then people who were aware of this card and was like actively playing around it, or just making sure that a Ripple Away didn't demolish their turns, it wasn't like that impactful. So
Mhm.
it is important to just kind of like make sure you test your tech cards enough times as well. So then you give your opponent a chance to adapt a little bit to the card by shifting their deck, but just like playing around the card a little bit more too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's mostly Poison the Well was like a really big example for me, where like the first couple of times I played with it, it felt so good, and then after like 2 weeks, it felt really bad.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good shout out. And I think that you can do this over a longer time horizon on something like Talishar. But there's also a lot of value to doing this with somebody you know, a testing partner, because they will, you know, you can play 4 games in a row and they get a chance to learn that card and adapt. Whereas if you play it out in the wild in Talishar, it may take people several weeks to adapt because you're playing different people all the time, right? So it's like hard for that to get like built into what people are used to seeing. It takes quite a bit of time for that to happen. And you can specifically ask your opponent to try to play around it. Play like you know I have this in my deck, or play like you don't know that this is in my deck until you see it, is like another thing I sometimes get if I think that. And it sort of depends like how surprising you think the tech is. If you think like nobody else is going to have thought of it, it might be reasonable to have them play like not like that. For example, if you're going to try and fatigue somebody in a strategy where people never fatigue you, maybe it's like, well, don't play as if I'm fatiguing you, and don't sideboard as if I'm fatiguing you until it becomes like apparent. And usually after like a turn or two, like a strong player will be like, like you're playing Syndra and you're blocking a lot. Like that's kind of weird. And they'll be able to clue in. But I do think that distinction of like if you're doing something surprising, asking your opponent to play as if they don't know. And also you can limit test the other direction and go, what if they do know? Like, what if they scout me or they predict or whatever, they hedge board? What does that look like? Can be kind of like the next step of that testing. But usually start with they don't know, and then you can see how much it falls off if they do start intentionally playing around it or sideboarding around it or so on, depending on like what you think's reasonable.
That doesn't mean that you don't get an edge from playing a tech card that's not well known, right? Like
Mhm.
if you go to a calling and it's like the deck's kind of new and this new tech card is not commonly played, you can kind of just assume people don't know how to play around that new tech card. Like you can kind of assume, when Acilio first came out, that if you played Amulet of Echoes, that they are going to lose that game. Like it's
Mhm.
like imagine being your third event playing Acilio or second event playing Acilio, and then your opponent plops down an Amulet of Echoes for the first time. I'll be panicking, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. If they don't have experience, it can be quite hard for them to adapt to. And yeah, not everybody you play is going to know. And also sometimes there's value in like Poison the Well could be a good example where sometimes even if people know how to play around Poison the Well, there's value in sort of like making them play around it, if that makes sense. Like when they're doing their combo math, they go, well, if the Poison the Well, I haven't seen the Poison the Well yet, or I've seen one Poison the Well, there could be another Poison the Well in the deck though. So I'm worried about that. And if they poison my combo, like how much damage do I lose, and do I still have enough damage to go for it here, type of thing. So there can also be value in just kind of forcing your opponent to take that tech card into consideration. And sometimes even a one of is effective if it's a long enough matchup where they'll eventually see you like pitch the card, for example, and they'll go, oh, I need to adjust my strategy around that. And sometimes that can be a lot of the value that the tech card brings you.
Anything else you want to touch on about this topic before we just move on and start talking about the year end stuff?
Yeah, so there's this question about the micro and macro strategies. I would think about like trying the extremes, like try fatiguing them, try full aggroing them. Which one feels better? Often the answer is like somewhere in the middle, but I think often like trying really opposite extremes gives you like a bit of a feel for different things. Asking yourself questions like who is favored in a long game is often really helpful for developing strategies where you want to, if you, for example, Syndra and Decao. I think this is a matchup that will like Syndras were struggling with, then Syndras were very favored, then KOs got it much closer. And I think like the key understanding in this matchup was that Syndra, they're both aggro decks, but Syndra is the one that actually wants a long game because she keeps flick knivesing every turn. She keeps threatening Mask of Momentum. KO doesn't have any 4-block D reacts, and as soon as he runs out of armor, you couldn't really deal with Mask of Momentum anymore, and Syndra gets further and further ahead. On the other hand, KO has a whole bunch of armor, way more than Syndra, and he also has access to Savage Sash and Beaten Trackers, which are like a whole bunch of like, I get one really super good turn. That's like basically what those cards do. And if you play a 3-game turn and you get, let's say, 15 value out of your equipment, that's like 5 value per turn out of your equipment. But if you play a 5-game turn and you still get that same 15 value, you get like 3 value per turn out of your equipment, which is worse, right? And it keeps getting worse and worse and worse, whereas like Syndra's keeps getting better and better and better. And so I think that this actually informed like a lot of the theory in it, where Syndra's learned to play more defensive, matchup got better for them. KO's learned to build their deck more and more aggressive and more explosive to just kill the Syndras as fast as possible, and the matchup got better. Then calling Seattle, I was playing more D-reacts for the matchup so that they couldn't kill me as fast. And I had like a Furnace, much more defensive build to like intentionally draw out the game. And then I think it got better for Syndra again. But I think that like this idea of who wants a long game or what does like a winning game look like for me is like the biggest way to develop these strategies. And then you can try and find ways to kind of like help enforce that game state or help steer the game towards that, whatever that winning game plan for you is. But it usually has to do with like length of game or some kind of extreme. For Verdance, the extreme would be like combo versus non-combo. And then you can try something in the middle as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Knowing your strength of your deck in the sense of like what makes your deck strong, what gives your deck the win percentage is one of the most important things to know when testing your deck or when thinking about your deck. And yeah, as you said, Syndra's main strength is Flick Knives, right? Flick Knives is a messed up card. The more value you get from that card, the better your deck gets. The more above rate your deck gets. So you gotta abuse that. This goes for every single deck. For example, like a Fatigue deck is gonna be trying to devalue your opponent's turns more than to improve your own turn. That's kind of like a very key concept in a Fatigue deck. It's more of a micro strategy, but like there'll be a lot of times when you're playing some Fatigue decks, do you even attack your opponent for 3? Like, does that actually improve your hand? And a lot of times the answer is no. You'd rather block with your stealth attack that attacks for 3 and blocks for 3 for like 2 points than to attack with it, because it helps your opponent convert their hand better if you attack them. And things like that matter a lot, and you really need to think about how does your deck gain value and where does your deck gain value. And that could come from denying value, it could come from activating your equipment more often. It could be about, converting your life total in ways that can attack your opponent in different ways or as many ways as possible. For example, Verdance, when you're playing a Fatigue deck into Verdance, one of the best things to do, or one of the only things you can do against combo Verdance, is to keep your life total above 50, so that when they do combo you survive at 4 life, right? Like, you have to do everything you can to keep your life above 50 or the game's over. Things like that. And you need to know all this stuff to really have the mastery with your deck.
Yeah. And I think in terms of the like, how do you test for this? I often like thinking of it as like, I have a hypothesis and I'm testing the hypothesis. So to like the examples you used, it could be like, well, can I just block everything and just favor preserving my life total as much as possible? So I'm going to block those 2s instead of attacking for 3s and see how that turns out. And maybe that goes really well for you. Fantastic. If it doesn't go so well, maybe what that might look like is, maybe I got fatigued, but I got fatigued by just a little bit. Like they counter fatigued me. And I actually had some like life cushion. I wasn't that low for the whole game. I just kind of ran out of cards. And that might be an indication, actually, I need to find a few more spots to be proactive. So like, what do those spots look like? And then you can kind of adjust your strategy from there. But having that, like, what if I do this, what happens, is like a really useful lens. And kind of same idea with the stay above 50, maybe have like a Poison the Well in my stack to counter their combo type thing. um, you can just be like, well, maybe this is a way that I can beat Verdance by staying high on life, having something like Poison the Well, and hoping it's good enough. And then you can you can play in a way to facilitate this, and you can also perhaps build your deck in a way to facilitate this. This can be like adding Poison the Well, adding life gain, all of these types of things, and test that strategy out. Is this good? How many percentage points does this give me compared to playing normally, and all of these types of questions. But I think just like the best way I could think of this is like posing a question, being like, maybe I can approach the matchup this way, trying it out, and usually trying it out like to the extreme, and then fine tuning from there. But I think anytime you can go into a matchup with a question of, this is going to be my game plan, what happens, you'll probably learn something. You might learn something useful, or you might also learn something that, okay, this didn't work, which might help give you other directions for things that could work.
I just want to talk about my Huntsman deck really quickly because this was something that I did with my Huntsman deck. In my Huntsman deck right now against Verdance, so this is before bannings. This might change now, but against exactly Verdance, I don't play Flick Knives, and I play AB4 in the form of the Web Spinner, head, arm, leg piece, and Arcane Lantern. But for me to be able to fatigue the Verdance, I need to play Graven's Call, which is a dagger that you can buy back from your graveyard by paying 2 silvers, and it gets a +1 counter. Then if I don't do this, I actually don't have enough damage to fatigue the Verdance after you run them out of cards, essentially. Run them out of damage. Because you don't play Flick Knives, there's no way to destroy your Graven's Call. And this came to the conclusion that I needed to play 1 blue bite in my Huntsman deck. So every single time people look at my Huntsman deck and go, why is just there 1 blue bite in the deck? And that is exactly just for the Verdance matchup, where you take out the Flick Knives, you can't flick the Graven's Call anymore, and that's your only dagger, and you need to destroy it somehow. So I play 1 blue bite in my deck just so that I can like facilitate this whole game plan of keeping above 50 life and be having a weapon that can do more than 1 damage, because I have to remove 1 dagger to play Arcane Lantern, or else I can't keep my health total above 40 for the rest of the game. It's like, yeah, it was a really fun like hypothesis I had to test, and it came to the conclusion that at a calling level or even at the PT level, the first time someone plays the Huntsman Verdance matchup, this strategy works really, really well. And obviously, by the 3rd or the 4th time you run the strategy into the Verdance, they kind of figure it out and they can adjust pretty well. But the first couple of times is really tough to beat my Huntsman deck with the Verdance.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. So I think just like testing with people, going in with questions and like testing specific hypothesis about the card, about the strategy, about all those types of things is probably the way to go about this. And the more you do this, the more refined it will get, and you can kind of like always gain edges. But I would say that your first 5 to 10 games in a matchup, depending on how many different ideas you have to test, are usually worth the most, and then it becomes like pretty steep diminishing returns after a while. But yeah, those early phases of like, let me try a few different things, let me try a few different tech cards and figure out exactly what's beneficial is all like pretty huge.
I think one last note before we move on would be Flesh and Blood is actually really interesting of a game where I feel like in not the pro level, but like the experience grinder level mentality of this game is more like the theory is important than the actual playtesting. I feel like that I get this like sentiment a lot more. In other card games, it's just like you'd rather play more games than like talk about what kind of cards might be good in specific matchup or what kind of game plans might be good in specific matchups. And it's actually a really interesting shift in like a perspective of TCGs. For example, like Magic the Gathering, like Pokemon TCG, things like that. It's actually just like worth a lot more to just like jam games, just try as many things as possible. Whereas in Flesh and Blood, it's actually worth a lot more the other way, is to be like thinking about what cards can, do things that you want, or like have macro level strategies that you can try and employ to beat some of these decks, are a little bit more important than another card game. So if you're from like let's say Yu-Gi-Oh or from Magic, Pokemon, things like that, you'll be surprised on how much more theory crafting works in this game than in other games.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. And I think a lot of that comes from like the cards all basically being modal. Like you can block, you can attack, you can make resources with all these cards. You have at a baseline like quite a few options with each of them, and you can even set up your second cycle. Like there's just like a lot of flexibility in how you play with your cards. So I think it just allows for it's easier to make your deck play in a wider range of styles because the cards are flexible. Whereas in other games, like your aggro deck is always going to kind of be an aggro deck, and it's really hard to like pivot to blocking. Whereas like any aggro deck in Flesh and Blood can just block with all its cards. Like it doesn't necessarily mean it's good, but like it's something you could do, right? So I think that's like probably where a lot of this comes from.
Okay, enough about this topic. We talked a lot more than I initially thought we would talk about on this topic. Let's quickly just talk about what happened this year, and we have a little bit of questions to talk about. And let's just blow past these.
Okay.
Okay, so we've had 3 sets this year. Yeah, it was Hunted, High Seas, and Super Slam. Man, Hunted feels like that felt like 2 years ago to me at this point. But those were the 3 draftable sets that came up this year. Which one of these 3 sets were your favorite?
I think my favorite set of the year was definitely High Seas. And I think High Seas is probably my favorite limited set of all time. I think it'd be like High Seas, then like Rosetta or MST, and then like Hunted or Toa is like sort of how I would rank them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I feel like High Seas was the high point in draft for this year, and Hunted and Super Slam were definitely not up to par in my opinion.
Okay. I actually didn't mind Hunted. I thought Hunted was like decent. Not great, but like reasonable.
Yeah, I think Hunted was like a reasonable drafting experience, but I feel like the format kind of didn't settle properly. I don't know if that makes sense. It felt like you just like there was a time frame or like you could still just force Syndra and then had a reasonable win rate, and like it was kind of hard to stop people who were just forcing Syndra. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel like a set like let's say High Seas or even like Part of the Mistveil where the draft portion really like tested your skills a lot. Whereas in Hunted, it was just like I didn't feel like the draft portion was like that skill intensive. If that makes sense.
I could see that. I could see that. Yeah.
But I think Hunted was a pretty good experience in general compared to Super Slam.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they're kind of like worlds apart. But yeah, I agree. Hunted was okay. High Seas was amazing. I think just like Treasure Island was so good. I really liked how the games kind of started out pretty slow and fair, and you're playing your like 3 for 7s, and then you get some gold and you get to do some busted things. I think having the like slow, fair ramp up into the really broken synergistic stuff was a lot of fun, because I think some of the other sets are like Rosetta, if you play Earth, is just like all slow, and some other sets are just like all explosive and you just kind of like kill people. Like Uprising was kind of like this. You just like play these Phi decks and they just explode people out of nowhere. Hunted had a bit of this too with like some of the Syndra decks. Even some of the Fang decks, it's just like, here's 20 damage. And it's like, yep, that is pretty hard to beat. And I like that High Seas usually had like a ramp up time into that.
Mm. Yeah, honestly, High Seas was a really good set. Like I was impressed with what they did with High Seas, and like it kind of felt like a different game too, right? Like High Seas was not the same as Constructed. It was like very, very different in the sense of like you got games where you generated so many gold, like some obscene amounts of gold that you got to convert later in the game. And how many times have you had like 6 gold turns? Like I've had a couple of 6 gold turns, and it felt really amazing.
Yeah, I remember at Nationals, I had this like gravy deck that had like, I think I had like 6 tipples on my 30 card gravy deck with like a whole bunch of allies. And I just remember having these games where I got to my 3rd cycle pitch stack to kill them before my opponent was through their 1st cycle, because I just had so much churn with golden tipples and golds that I just like turboed through my entire deck and set up a pitch stack. And it was just like really fun, but also I don't think there's really any analog to this. Like this is kind of like a unique to High Seas experience if you draft this like very specific deck.
Yeah, and I think that's a really big upside for a format where it's like it doesn't feel like you're playing mini CC or like a really bad CC or a blitz deck, right? And I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought it was cool that there was like often like the really good limited cards transfer to CC, which makes sense. And there's like examples of this, like Tipple was a good example of this. But I also liked how like the mutinies were like super good in High Seas Limited and just like weren't constructed cards. So it kind of gave it its own flavor.
Oh yeah, the one that stole gold, right?
Yeah, yeah, the ones that stole gold.
Yeah, and it wasn't yeah, because those cards weren't good into like non gold decks, but in high seas, everyone's a gold deck. Yeah. I do. That makes a lot of sense. I do agree with you there. Okay, then let's talk about the next question. Favorite event of the year. What was your favorite event? I don't know how you interpreted this question, but yeah, let's start with you, Yuki. What was your favorite event of this year?
I think my favorite event of the year was PT Singapore for a variety of reasons. I think it's like probably the best venue Flesh and Blood has ever had by a pretty big margin. That venue was really nice. They had like the room was awesome. They had this big stage. It just like it felt like I was attending something special, which the other not to say like the other events don't do, but like not in the same way that Singapore felt. Like Singapore, I really felt like I was like attending something like cool and special and interesting, and I thought that was a big win. Singapore itself is also just like a cool location, which helps a lot. And I thought that the beach party that they did was actually a lot of fun and kind of a nice addition to the whole event. It was cool to see like a whole bunch of the people that you usually see at events, but in just like a very different and kind of more casual setting. And yeah, for all of those reasons, I thought Singapore was honestly just maybe one of my favorite Flesh and Blood events in general.
When you talk about it that way, yeah, it does. It was really different from all the other events, right? Because of the beach party and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of just like felt distinct and felt like special and memorable. Whereas like I think back to London and I'm like, yeah, we were in this like big hall and I hung out in a hotel and tested and I hung out in an Airbnb and tested and it was fine.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I feel like I'll say my answer. I was gonna say PT London, but that it wasn't because of the experience for the event. I got to play Fatigue Slippy for that event, and it kind of felt really good of being able to play like a really teched out deck for a PT with the plan that I wanted to use, and it got me the results that I wanted. I unfortunately lost my last round to cash the event against the noob. The deck functioned the exact way that I wanted to. People presented a clean 60 into me, and I just it was an Aurora meta. The Auroras had like kind of zero chance into the Fatigue Slippy list because they physically don't have enough cards in deck to beat my 70 card Fatigue Slippy pile. I had a lot of fun just being able to just present my deck and being like, at deck presentation, I felt like I couldn't lose anymore against Auroras.
Nice. Yeah, it is fun when you make a meta call and it feels like it works out. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, man, I don't remember who exactly it was. It was day 2. It was kind of deep in the rounds. I played into a Zen. He was kind of a known. Oh man, what was his name? I
Oh,
remember.
you played Sam Sutherland, didn't you?
Oh, I think it's Sam Sutherland. Yeah, and he recognized my name or my voice, and then he added a couple extra cards as he told me, and I'm just like, oh no, Zen adding like 5 extra cards means I can't beat it.
You need to talk more about aggro on the podcast, Jay. Then people won't know if you're gonna fatigue them or aggro them.
Oh, yeah, right? You know what? Someday I'm gonna go to a PT. I'm just gonna play the most meta aggro deck, and I'll get them. They'll play 5 extra cards in their deck, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm just streamlined 60 card aggro. Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta keep them on their toes.
Someday. Look, I'm pretty much locked on Huntsman for as long as that deck is reasonably okay.
But think about it. You could hit them with the mix up and do aggro huntsman.
Yeah, I could. I could see Saber Bloodsheds coming into my deck soon, so
Ooh,
we'll see where this ends.
that's so interesting. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next one. Proudest accomplishment of the year.
I'll start. This is actually the same. Is PT London. I was actually really proud with my Slippy list. My draft prep for that format was really good, and I feel like I played every single game of that tournament really well. I think there was a game against Shing that I played that was completely doomed, and Shing just demolished me. I know he doesn't even remember this game because the game was such a blowout. It was made me feel like I was just playing a pile of cards and he was playing a full deck. Other than that game, every single game of that tournament I played, I thought I played really well and I was like actually on point. After that happened, after PT London, oh man, I don't know, man. My focus was off. My focus was off all year. I was playing PQs pretty badly. Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like fell off after PT London.
Fair enough. Yeah, PT London was a high point for you for sure. For me, I think I have a couple answers actually. So one is just like the team I test with. I'm often in sort of like a leadership management type role, and we've been working a lot on improving our testing process over the course of the year, just like finding new ways to share information, practice together, help each other out, the actual like physical like team house stuff. We've been trying to improve all of that. And I feel like we've made big improvements. Like people feel more prepared just as like a feedback thing. And also we had Jimmy Nguyen make top 8 in Pro Tour Singapore. And then also we had like multiple top 8s at Worlds. And with Majin Bei and Ian Zhang, and just yeah, just like very cool to see us put in time into improving that testing process, and then it kind of like translating directly to like really good results across the whole team. Also like multiple calling top 8s, just like it's been a really good year for the team, and so I think that's like probably my proudest accomplishment. But if you're asking me like personal results, either the world premiere for High Seas, I made a calling top 8 in Taipei. That was like a high point for me since it's limited. Also, like PT Singapore, I came in 12th, and I was quite proud of that, especially because I had like the really good day one. Then I started losing, and I think previously I had some times when I got kind of tilted and would just keep losing and then wouldn't cash. Whereas this one I lost, and then I was able to like even it out and start winning again. And even though I ended up coming in 12th and didn't quite make top 8, I was happy to like keep it together and not and make like personal improvement in terms of not getting like too frustrated with my losses and letting that affect my future rounds.
Yeah, I remember you talking about this earlier in the year too, and I feel like this was something that you brought up before too. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like that's a good thing, right? Like you talked about it before the event and you talked about it after the event. So that's something that's hard to do, honestly, in anything.
Yeah, it's sort of like you practice, you get better at the thing you're doing, but the mental aspect is like it's harder to like there's like it doesn't feel like there's a way to like directly practice that, and you can think about it beforehand, but like trying to implement it in the moment can be, I don't know, it can be tricky. We're emotional by nature, and it's hard to override that sometimes.
Yeah. I feel like the sports analogy would be you have to do the meditations and stuff like that. I'm not sure how effective these things are, but that's the most common answer that I get if you're playing sports or things that require these like mental fortitude stuff is, you gotta spend 5 minutes of your day every day doing some kind of meditation. That's what I hear at least.
Yeah. I do hear it's very, very helpful. I've had times where I've done a little bit of this, and it is helpful. It's also a lot of time. It's like hard to always dedicate yourself to, but
Mhm.
yeah, I do think there's value to it for sure.
Favorite constructed meta of the year. Which meta did you like the best? We had a lot of different metas throughout this year, actually. We were talking about it when we were doing the notes today, but we started with an Aurora meta. Like Rosetta was fully out, Hunted came out, Aurora was a kind of looking like the best deck. Then the Aurora Armory deck came out, and Aurora exploded for about 6 months or 5 months. Then it won so many tournaments that it allowed, and then it kind of like settled down to what we have currently, essentially. What did you like about this year? What part of the constructed meta did you like about this year?
Yeah, there was a lot of different decks that I liked and a lot of different metas that were I think like overall this was a pretty good year for CC is what I'll say. Like we didn't have an MST. But I think that my most favorite meta was probably actually just the most recent one. I'll say pre-bans. Not to say that post-bans isn't good. I haven't made up my mind about it yet. It's too new. But I think that this meta before bans was actually probably my favorite, just because there was like it just felt like there was like multiple top decks. Which one was the top deck kept changing, and there was like kind of like a whole bunch of A tier decks that could show up, could top 8 events, and could do well. And even which A tier decks those were, feel like it shifted. Whereas like by comparison, I feel like maybe around PT London it was very like Aurora Enigma, maybe a bit of like Slippy in there as a bit of a rogue deck, but it was like and maybe like there was like some Prism as like a rogue deck, but it was like pretty narrow by comparison, I felt.
I was gonna say the exact same thing. I said pre-ban CC. Yeah, the pre-ban CC format was really good. Like honestly, any deck I get to play Huntsman and feel good is a good format for me. So that's what this exactly was. Is I got to play Huntsman, and it was okay. It was fine. It's not a good deck, but it didn't feel like before when you just felt like you had to play Aurora, or like you had to try and play a deck that had to beat Aurora, is kind of what it felt like 6 months ago.
Yeah. Whereas I feel like if you look at the last like while of the CC meta, I feel like there's just like maybe not 15, but like 10 to 12 decks that just like could make top 8, and you'd be like, yeah, that makes total sense. And like that is just, I think, like really healthy in general for like any TCG. And I think among the most diverse that we've seen in Flesh and Blood outside of like heavy hitters is like maybe the other time we had as diverse a meta. I found the games in this meta a little more interesting than heavy hitters.
I feel like a lot of people will agree with you on that. Okay. Basically, it's very similar question. What was your favorite deck of the year?
I had a lot of decks I liked this year. They kind of all came and went, is how I feel.
Okay. So you don't have like one favorite deck?
I think my favorite is probably like Aurora Post Armory deck. I really like that deck, but then she LO'd. And then I like Slippy a lot too. And then Bonds got banned. And I also like Syndra a lot before the BNR. And maybe I still like Syndra. Still need to do testing with Syndra. Still need to figure out exactly where she's at. They keep banning, or all the decks I like keep getting banned or LO'd. Maybe this says something about me.
You like the powerful decks, is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, powerful proactive deck seems to be the trend here. But yeah, there's quite a few decks this format that I actually really enjoyed, or this year. What about you? Is it Huntsman?
Honestly, I feel like everyone knows the answer by now.
Huntsman.
Yeah, not even close. I'm gonna skip a question here for now, and just like to talk about one of the questions we have here. Favorite card printed this year: Hunter or Hunted? This card is amazing. This is like the most non-broken card that they've ever printed. This is like the most fair, unbelievable card that they printed, and I'm just like, oh man, I'm so happy. LSS did like Huntsman so much justice by printing this card. This card like warps so many matchups. It's so man, I'm in love with this card. This card's so good.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense actually. I think that like this card pretty much single-handedly made Huntsman from like why would you ever play Huntsman to Huntsman is like a pretty real deck that is also not at all broken. It's just like a real deck that you can play now. Which is like pretty sweet. We don't usually just see like one card that does so much and doesn't feel broken.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like that's the part that I really like about this card is like this card doesn't feel broken. Like they could have made this broken if it just like blocked for 6 or something. This card would be like unbelievably good.
Yeah, that's true. It's easy to print a broken card, but it's hard to print a card that is this high impact but also feels reasonable. So yeah, I think that's a great shout out. I think it's a very well designed card. I think My favorite card printed this year is probably Dual Threat. This is a card that just like feels cool to use, and I keep coming back to it. Like I wanted to put Dual Threat in New, I wanted to put Dual Threat into Slippy, I thought about putting Dual Threat into Syndra. Did it actually work out in most of these cases? Like no, not really. But I think Dual Threat is just like kind of a sweet card. Like it asks a very specific thing of you. And I feel like for any deck that has like two weapons, like you always kind of need to consider like, oh, is Dual Threat a real card? Because 0 for 6 is so strong. It's sort of like 0 for 6 go again, that's yellow 3 block is just like broken, right? But they kind of like, I feel like they put the quest for this card at exactly the right level where like it's just good enough that you can consider this card, and it like just like it sees play in Ira, like it just is a real card, but it's also not just like an auto include everywhere because it does ask a fair bit of you, and I think like yeah, they just like struck a really good balance on this card, I think.
I forgot this card was printed in Hunted, so yeah, you're right. This is a card printed this year, huh?
Yeah, it's been around for a while. I've tried to put this in so many decks. It's like almost it's almost like a bit of a meme in our testing server. Like Ian Zhang and I will always be like, can we put Dual Threat in this deck? And like like what, like someone will mention Dual Threat, and then like Ian and I will be like in that thread talking about how do we put Dual Threat in the deck, even if it's suspect. Yeah, I love this card.
Okay, yeah, fair enough, fair enough. And honestly, once you do find a deck that can play dual threat, it'll explode.
Yeah. I mean, like look at like Prismatic Leyline. They're kind of similar cards, right? Like yellow 3 block 0 for 6 that asks a fair bit of you.
Yeah. Except prismatic leyline can be a 0 for 5 a lot of the times. That
Yeah, it's not always a 0 for 6.
yeah, whereas dual threat is a 0 for 3 or 0 for 6. Yeah,
For sure.
pretty big difference there. Okay, then we'll go back a question. Most hated constructed deck of the year. I'll answer first. I'm gonna say Gravy Bones. I don't like this deck. This deck is, in my opinion, it warps the format a little bit too much. There's no real way to deal with this deck in a meaningful way other than to run it down. And I really just don't like the fact that there really isn't a good way for. There's not, the card pool doesn't exist to deal with allies in a meaningful way that doesn't involve playing a Midas touch that, like, and Midas touch doesn't even necessarily work because they get so much gold out of it. And I'm just like not a fan of these decks that generate such a polar gameplay that is so hard to interact with for 25% of the decks, and the other 25% of the decks, the way that they interact with it is that they don't interact with it. And it's like there are some decks that get to interact with it, but I feel like the majority of the deck's strategy into Gravy Bones is like to ignore the allies and just kill them, or trigger Masco momentum by hitting the allies. Like Kasai's is like some of the on hits works on the allies, so it's great for you. Like sure, that is like one deck that can kind of interact with Gravy in a meaningful way, but I feel like a lot of the decks like Guardians, Assassins, just like can't really interact with these onboard allies in a meaningful way unless they have Go again.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think something that I kept expecting to happen that never happened is like a little bit more effective hate cards for allies. Like, for example, I really thought we were going to see a Guardian card with Crush that killed an ally if it crushes. Something like that, I think, would just like go a long ways. And in like a similar vein, maybe like slightly different, but I think that is unfortunate that we still have so many cards templated in the way of like if you attack like if there is an attacking hero type text, or if when you attack a hero. So for example, like Cholicera doesn't have Go again, even if Gravy Bones is marked if you attack his ally. And like that just kind of sucks. And it just feels like a lot of like Huntsman's text on his card, or not Huntsman, Marionette's text on his cards just like don't work properly when you attack an ally, or like Victor can't clash allies. There's all these like kinds of like small things that just like, because it's an ally, your card or your hero just like doesn't work properly against it. And like that, I think that part like really sucks. So I would like to see maybe like more thoughtful templating so that more stuff just like doesn't randomly fall apart if it's against an ally. And also, I think that they could go for a little bit stronger ally hate um, in general.
Yeah, I agree with you. My biggest my biggest downfall with Huntsman is I have two Hunter or Hunteds, and they attack me with an ally, and I'm just like, well, my whole game plan doesn't work against an ally attack because Hunter or Hunted says attack the hero, so it doesn't work on allies. It just doesn't work. It's awful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. I think Gravy is like close to a reasonable design, but there's just like a few too many things. I think like Fearless is like also just such a like you just like Fearless just I don't know. It's just like this blue 3 block that's in their deck, and like most of the time it doesn't matter, but then when it does matter, it's kind of miserable. And I think there's just like a few too many things in Gravy where it's just like this just like feels kind of bad for no like kind of no reason. Like it doesn't have to feel this bad, but it just kind of does.
Yeah, my card is Remembrance. Like, why does this card work in Gravy the way that it does?
Yeah, where you can like target the whaler as it's about to flip. Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. My most hated constructed deck is like maybe a bit of a cop out. I put Kano recently LL'd, so don't have to deal with them anymore. I don't think I realized just how much I liked Kano because like thinking back to like heavy hitters, when I won Battle Hard in Hartford on KO, I actually played against Majin Bay in finals, and I had this like really interesting KO Kano game. It's actually there's coverage for that, so you can check that out if you're interested. But like it was really interesting. Like he's trying to play cards on my turn, poke me down. I'm trying to hold up resources. There's this like back and forth and who has tempo, and it felt like there was a ton of play to it. But the way that Kano's evolved, you just like you have Kindle, you have all these potions, you have all these like open the floodgates or various cards. Like there's there's different builds of Kano, but I think at some point we reach this point where like AB3 doesn't mean you're safe against Kano, and Kano doesn't really try to poke you down. Like before, like Kano kind of needs to poke you down to 30 and then do like a pretty deterministic combo. And now it's just like hope I set up like multiple Kindles and just like you have AB3, but you're dead from 40 anyways. And it's just kind of miserable. Like you're just kind of playing this game and you try to kill them and stay as healthy as possible and hold up AB3, and then sometimes you just explode anyways. And it's just, man, it is not interesting. And it's also not interesting having to just like, there's this deck that's like 3% of the room, and I can put a sideboard card in that's worth like 30% in the matchup, but do I want to commit these sideboard cards for this like 3% deck in the room where like if I don't put it in, I can't win the matchup, but if I do put it in, I get to play the game? It's just like there's so many things about this deck that I didn't quite realize how much I disliked until I was at Calling Seattle, and I was like in fear of like, oh, I cut the Kano hate because it's like the last weekend for Kano, and I'm just like sitting there being like, please don't pair me against Kano. I don't have my AB1, and like it's just so like I'm glad that we don't have to do this anymore. Like there was a point where Kano was fine. I think people hated on this deck a little too much, but by the end of it, I was very tired of Kano.
Yeah, it did. It asked for a sideboard space, which is honestly for a deck that is like 1%, 2%, 3% of the meta game share, it felt like too much, right?
Yeah, and it felt like the sideboard slot mattered too much.
You know what though? Like, I feel like when Verdance was in meta, I was okay with it.
Mhm.
As long as there's another wizard that kind of asked you to play AB. For example, like I have Oasis Respite in my deck for Verdance and not for Kano, and then when I get paired into Kano, I just have AB4 plus Oasis Respites in for Kano now because I have it for Verdance. So it doesn't feel that bad. But if Verdance wasn't there, like, what do I do? Do I even bring AB? Like, how much AB do I want to bring? And just like
Yeah.
it taking up like 5 or 6 cards just to do this is miserable, right? Like, out of my 80 cards, I I have to spend almost 10% of my deck just to beat Kano feels awful.
Yeah, I agree. I think when there's like more overlap, it definitely feels better. I will say that there's also just the like playing against Kano is not very interesting anymore.
No.
Like there was a point where I think Kano was actually quite a skill testing deck, and there was a lot of counterplay when it was like pre Kindle. I think Kindle is like and Will of Arcana are really the cards that like kind of put it over, where you're just this like all in kill you no matter what, unless you have like AB3 Oasis or something. Like you need like so much prevention to shut him down. It's crazy. But yeah, since then it's just like, man, this guy's just playing solitaire over here, and I'm just determining how much time he has to play solitaire before like he either just kills me or he just like fizzles and dies. And yeah, we don't have to do that anymore. That's good. He kind of doesn't play Flesh and Blood is like kind of how I feel about Kano. Like he just like doesn't interact with the combat chain. He doesn't really want to block you for the most part. He doesn't really want to attack you on his turn. He's just kind of like sitting there and being like, okay, do I have the thing? Hopefully you're dead. And it's just like, I don't know. It's just not very fun.
No, Yuki, you can say that because you're playing a deck that can present damage to Kano. Imagine playing a deck that can't present damage.
Yeah, there's that too. There's some decks that just absolutely cannot beat a good Kano, and that kind of sucks too.
Look, I'm saying I have AB4 and 2 Oasis in my deck. If they get 12 turns to set up, I'm still dead.
Yep.
Yeah, it turned out to be a crazy deck, and it was legal forever.
He kind of went through this evolution of like being actually unplayable to being this kind of like rogue deck that was kind of interesting to this like pretty reasonable and interesting deck around like heavy hitters. And then yeah, I think the book ban plus Kindle plus Well of Arcana changes all made him not so interesting. Anyways, enough about Kano. We were talking about, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let's just do one last thing before we move on. Would be your least favorite card that got printed this year?
I don't know if this is like actually my least favorite card, but what I put was Gold Baited Hook. I think the part about this card that I really hate is that it steals gold. I think it just creates these like really awful dynamics between the pirate heroes where you're just like, I have all the gold. I keep stealing all your gold. And because I have gold, I can keep on the front foot and keep stealing all your gold. And like they just become about like the gravy mirrors just become very about like disrupting your opponent's graveyard and stealing all their gold as much as possible. And it's like quite snowbally, or like even like Marlin Gravy, just like I think that matchup's like somewhat close, but a lot of the games are like Marlin's just like, I take all your gold every turn and rip your cards from your hand that make more gold, so your deck doesn't do anything. And then on the other side, Gravy's just like, I keep hitting you with all your allies because you stumbled and you don't have gold and you can't really load and find your threats, and so you don't really get to play the game. And I'm just like, what? Like, why do we do this? Like, does it need to do this? Like, it could just make a gold. It'd be so reasonable. Like, the card be so good still. Does it really need to just like snowball the pirate mirrors into oblivion? I don't know.
Okay, that makes sense. I was like thinking like, why gold baited hook? But yeah, you're right. In those matchups, it's kind of miserable, huh? I feel like every single time I play against it, I haven't played a gold deck in a while. And some people did these really interesting lines of like being able to play Tip the Barkeep, giving me a gold token and then stealing it right away. And I'm just like, holy, they put the tip back in their deck and they got a gold token. This is like kind of insane. Like I got like, bamboozled. Like it doesn't really affect the game that much, but I am playing a fatigue deck, so like them keeping an extra card in deck is kind of annoying for me. So
yeah,
it's cool. That was a cool like line of play that you can do in Gravy. So
yeah. That is pretty cool. One more thing about Gold Baited Hook that just came to mind was I remember for LL testing, working on the Dio deck, the Art of War combo Dio deck a little bit, and I remember like playing the Marlin matchup. I'm like, man, I wonder like what helmet you play. Like, do we want armor so we can try to block something else, or do you want to just like combo harder? I'm like, I'm gonna try the combo harder, just like limit test it. And I present the Crown of Dominion, and Marlin's like, okay, I go first. Load. Activate Gold Baited Hook. I'm like, okay. Just not playing Crown of Dominion. You just immediately steal the only thing that my headpiece does. It was just like the fastest I've been like, you know what, we can keep playing this game. I'm just presenting a different helmet. Like we're not we're just not doing this.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Crown of Dominion versus Gold Beta Hook is so funny.
They basically steal your headpiece. It's like so crazy.
That's so good. Oh, my least favorite card in the card for this year, Everbloom Life. Um,
Yeah.
this card is so, how do I say it? Like, it doesn't affect the games that where it doesn't matter. This card just doesn't matter. It's just an Earth card, right? It's just life. Like that's what this card is in like so many matchups. And in like the small chance you play against a matchup that it matters, it's like your whole game plan.
Yeah.
Like, why do we need to give decks like remembrance that you can play forever that gains a life?
I think, yeah, I agree. I actually also really dislike this card. I kind of expect this card to get banned at some point, honestly. I think that, like, maybe the place where it is like the most egregious is these like full fatigue Jarl decks that have cropped up, where they're just like, my end game is like, you know, like I'm against like Kodachi lock or something, but I'm gonna like pitch Heart of Findle to my Rampart, gain a life, and then like not block the other Kodachi. And then my turn, I go like Everbloom, tucking more Everblooms, and then I get to like hit you back. And then my whole like turn cycle is just like block 1, gain 3 life, hit you for 4, and it takes 0 cards out of my deck. I'm gonna do this over and over again. And like this is Jarl's endgame into like a lot of decks actually. And it's just sort of like, why do we have infinite life gain? Like it's really slow, but like why? And I've even played this in like the Verdance and Florian mirrors where we both just like keep tucking our Everbloom life, and it's just like, why are we doing this? Why doesn't this card just banish itself? I think if the card just banished itself, well, I mean, it'd be too good because of decompose, but maybe if it like flipped upside down, like had like Watery Grave essentially, like
Yeah, I agree with you. If it had Watery Grave, it would be fine. Or if it said other than Everbloom Life.
yeah. Or if it couldn't tuck itself, it'd still be fine. Like I don't even mind putting back like E-Strike with it. I think that's like kind of sweet. But yeah, the just like infinitely recurring and looping itself is just, yeah, we got rid of Droner Brutality for a reason, and this is just kind of a different flavor of the same thing, it feels like.
Yeah, there was a game where I was like testing before, and I was like just this is like the very early stages of me trying to fatigue Verdance with Huntsman, and the end game was just like, oh, they have 3 Everbloom life. I have 2 daggers and a Heart of Fyendal. The game draws. Like I can do 3 damage a turn. I can do 2 damage a turn and gain life. They can gain 2 life.
Yeah.
It's just like the game's over. Which is why, I had to move to Graven's Call because it does 1 extra damage.
Yeah. It's just so like, you play this card not even for this mode, but then it just randomly has this super powerful endgame mode, and it's like the Earth decks are already so good in the endgame. They don't.
I feel like this is just like they didn't need to print this card. It's just so many other things they could have printed, and they chose this one. Yeah, I feel like they just like made a mistake on templating the card more than the actual card itself.
Yeah. I think most of the things about the card are fine. I just think it endlessly looping itself is like the problem.
Yeah, it's like the drone. Yeah, it's like it going itself, doing this thing itself every single turn is not good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I remember like really early on they talked about like the core tenets of the game, and like one of the core tenets of Flesh and Blood was that every card matters, and like they haven't like used this like language in a long time, but it really does. Like when you think about the game in terms of like most games, it's like, yeah, like every card in your deck does matter. And like this is why like Bonzo Agony got banned, because like you just like rip all of a card out of their deck, and that was like super impactful. And going the other direction where you just have this card that just keeps looping back over and over and over again is like kind of just interacts in a really weird way with that, where it just like kind of makes it not feel like your cards are as important.
You know a really funny card I'm playing in Huntsman to beat this card?
What's that?
It's Gravekeeping.
Because you can banish it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I have to play it. I have to codex it, and I have to play it a second time to banish the second copy.
Yeah.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous what I have to do to try and beat that deck. It's not okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Then the last question to wrap up the episode. What do you want to improve or do better for next year? Yeah, last episode of the year, but this can be personal, it could be flesh and blood, whatever you want.
Yeah, I kind of have two goals, both related to Fab. On the like personal achievement side, I really want to try and top eight a tier four and put in the practice to do that. So that's like PT Worlds. Obviously, this isn't in my control fully, so it's just like a goal that would be nice to get. But that's sort of like what I'm hoping to achieve. And then in terms of stuff on the content front, um, I want to try doing weekly Patreon updates. I experimented with this a little bit around Super Slam release, and I was like, I'm going to release a guide a week. And I kind of realized that like that wasn't really sustainable. It just takes too much testing and too much time to like not even making the guide itself. It's like everything else surrounding it. And I found like by the fourth one, I was like, man, like this guide is decent, but like I kind of wish I just had more time to work on this guide because like I just like don't have all the answers yet. Like there's only so many games that I was able to play, and like I wish I could just like put more time into polishing this guide, but I committed to this deadline, and like that feels kind of bad. So I think the model I'm gonna try out. We'll see how it works. Is just doing small weekly posts, and once it's at a point where I'm ready to write a guide, I'll do a guide. So you can probably expect a similar number of like the full deck list plus sideboard guides as we've seen. It'll probably be very similar to the way it's been, but there's going to be like smaller weekly updates that might be like intermediary steps working up to that guide. So if you're curious, you can look at the Syndra post that I put up recently, kind of like my thoughts on Syndra post BNR. There's like two different deck lists in there that I've been messing around with. There's like a very rough sideboard guide, but it's not complete. One of the decks is like 77 cards, so it's like still very much a work in progress. But you can kind of see where I'm at. It's like 3 pages of my thoughts, and it's kind of a smaller post, and I think that is like pretty doable. Or if I like play a tournament with a deck that I've been working on, but it's not quite ready for a guide, I could write a tournament report. So you can expect like smaller updates like that. And then once I'm at the point where the guide's ready, you can expect the guide.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because it is a lot of work to put like a full on guide, right? That has all the matchups and stuff like that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to know like how long it takes, or sometimes you spend time on a deck and then you go, this deck's not actually good. Like that happens too. So I think if I just kind of do weekly updates and go, here's what I'm testing, that's a lot more doable. So yeah, hopefully that will mean more consistent content for you. We'll kind of try this out I'm going to try and commit to this for like at least a month or two and then see where we're at.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. For my side, I think the one thing that I really do need to improve, is my games and callings, battle hardens, things like that. I feel like I play okay, and then there's some games where I just like kind of just like don't focus. It's like the way that's how I did in day two at Seattle was like I just like kind of lost focus. I just wasn't thinking. I don't know what was going on, but I need to like go into these game with a lot more focus. And maybe having some kind of like pregame, just to like make sure that I'm focused for that game might be something I would try next year. But yeah, I think my callings, battle hardens, even some PQs, they were executed really badly in my opinion, and I need to kind of like refocus and make sure that if I'm going to travel to these events, that I need to play these events at a level that I'm happy with, you know? Like it's
Mhm.
it's really bad to like commit so much time and money into going to traveling to these events and then playing worse than you know you can is like not an ideal spot to be in, and like consistently playing worse too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that was super real. I think that and it's hard, right? Like it's a long day, and maintaining your energy and focus and gameplay throughout all of that, and not just making careless mistakes somewhere is hard. Like that's just like super real. And yeah, I can relate to this as well. This is something that I've like been working on for a long time, and it gets better, but it's I don't think anyone's perfect at this, I guess, is what I say. I think like everybody has this to varying degrees, but I can definitely understand feeling like you're not happy with where you're at.
Yeah, it's like I felt like I was happier with my play and stuff like maybe like 2, 3 years ago. Even in other games, but I feel like I felt this year was like quite a bit of a drop off from before, which I was like pretty unhappy with. Like couple a lot. I think like 3 or 4 games at Canadian nationals. I was so off my game. I kind of punted it. And calling Seattle, there were side event games where I wasn't that I kind of just like threw away for no reason. Calling main event for Seattle, there was 2 games where I definitely made some mistakes that are kind of unbelievably bad. Like things that are just like, wow, like I converted my hand for 9 instead of 12 type of mistakes, which is like just outrageous mistakes, honestly. So,
Mhm.
I don't know what I would want to do. I'll have to think about exactly what the steps I want to take would be, but I need to
Yeah.
take some kind of step to improve this. And yeah, I think I'm just like losing focus more so than the last couple of years I've been playing card games.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good observation, and I think like maybe some of our listeners can relate to this as well. But I always think like with this kind of stuff, the first step is like identifying the problem, and then you can start working on it. So it's good that you've like noticed that, and then you can try and take steps to improve. And it's always hard to know like what angle to take it from. It's like, is it like sleep or nutrition related? Is there some kind of like preparation that you can do, or like habits that you can build to like help eliminate some of these like common play patterns? Like for me, like there's certain like I almost like have like things that I go through like when I drop a hand. There's like certain things that I think through every single time, like that help me make sure that I don't hopefully don't make careless mistakes. So yeah, there's like a bunch of different ways to tackle it, and it's hard to know what will work until you get to try it a few different things.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting for me because like in testing games or when I'm testing, I'm just like playing fine, right? Like it's
Mhm.
like going to prep for these events, it was fine, and then just like playing the actual game, it's just like you know, it's my turn. I'm like looking to see how I convert my hand. And I'm just like, wait, why the fuck didn't I block? Pardon my language, but yeah, it's like what is this blue still doing in my hand? Like I'm not gonna arsenal it. Like, am I gonna actually pitch this and dagger you for one for no reason? Like,
Mhm.
what am I doing with this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's like a type of mistake that I made when I first started the game, not 3 years in, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure, for sure. Yeah, it's hard to know. It could even just be like time pressure type stuff.
Yeah, that might be it. I might be too conscious of the clock right now.
Yeah,
That's very real because I'm playing Huntsman.
yeah. This is like something that I talk about with people a lot where I think the problem of playing too slow is like really obvious, and like people often when people think about like mismanaging clock, it's about like, oh, they don't play fast enough, they draw. And like that's like a lot of what you see on camera. But there's also instances of people playing too fast, and I'm sure that people play too fast on camera, but it's like really hard to identify just from watching. But it often can look like making careless mistakes. And I think if you are consistently finishing with a bunch of time in your round, and you are prone to making mistakes that could be avoided, it could be a case that you just need to like obviously not slow down everywhere because you don't want to slow play,
Mhm.
but like understanding how to identify like these are spots where maybe thinking for an extra 20 seconds is like important. And it's like a hard skill to build. But yeah, I think like both sides of clock management are really important. Basically, like you need to play quickly enough that you're not drawing and not slow playing your opponent, but also not so quickly that you're rushing and making some careless decisions as a result.
Hmm. Yeah, I think now that I think about it, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I am finishing almost all my games within time, with like a good amount of time left. So I think I can take a little bit more time than I am currently taking. Cause like, yeah, no, it's that actually is a good that's a good point. That's a good point that I didn't think about. Yeah, I think I'm very used to playing these like fatigue long games. So like I'm very used to playing in a very high pace for I need to play 40 turns sometimes. Like like it's really hard to do that in 50 minutes. So um yeah, yeah. You know what? I think you are right. I may have been rushing too many things. I might just need to take my time and think about more my plays a little bit more. Take or use the clock a little bit more wisely might be a good advice. Yeah, yeah. You know what? I'll try that. I'm actually not thinking about playing Huntsman for the RTN season right now, so might not be relevant. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. We'll change
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I find maybe for for you, but also for our listeners, I think like a couple of really useful things here is just like trying to like make a habit of checking the clock regularly really helps me manage my time properly. Where I sort of like look at the clock and be like, how far into the game are we, and make a judgment call of like we're playing at a good pace or not playing at a good pace. So like I know like okay, I'm playing too slow. I need to play faster. Like we're in time. We're approaching a situation where we could be in time trouble if this continues. I'm gonna like make an effort to speed up. Or also like I've also been in the spot where it's like, especially I find especially in those like grindy, fatiguey matchups where I'm like, oh, like we both might play all of our deck. I'm gonna play pretty quickly. Sometimes I do that, and then I look and I'm like, I have 20 cards in deck, and there's 20 minutes left in the round. Like I can just like chill out a little bit. Like not that I'm gonna play slow, but like I have time to like think things through and make sure that I pay attention to my opponent's pitch and just like like I've played fast enough at this point that I can slow down a little bit is how I would put it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good tip. That's a really good tip. Yeah, I would say. I think one other thing that I would appreciate people doing. This is you don't have to do this, but I so this is a really tricky topic because I play a lot of fatigue decks, but there's a lot of people who don't play fatigue and they'll play an aggro deck. What frustrates me a lot is when people play these aggro decks kind of slowly, but they're playing at a pace where if they're winning, then the game will end with enough time that by the time that it'll go to time, and if goes to time, that it will either draw or they win. And if that makes sense, I don't know how the better way of explaining that. Can you help me, Yuki?
Uh,
You know what I'm trying to say?
and yeah, I know exactly what you're trying to say. Like your game plan takes like X number of turns, and they're not playing at a pace that will allow you to actually finish, even if you've reached a game state that should be winning for you because they've like run out of threats in deck. You don't actually have enough time to close the game because they're not playing quite quickly enough for it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So like I would really appreciate if people could like not just think about being like, "Oh, look at the time." Be like, "Oh, there's 20 minutes left. You're at 4, so I'm going to take my time." But like just because I'm at 4 doesn't and you're at 40 doesn't mean that like we're going to finish this game. Like I'm going to run you out of cards in deck, then I need to do 40 damage to you, right? Like that's gonna take a little bit more than 20 minutes. But like I find some people will like actually just like slow down once they know that they're like kind of locked in that game where it's like they're either drawing or winning now, right? Like that's kind of like their mind state. I don't know. There's like no way to really fix this issue. But like I've definitely been in a spot where I'm just like, there's kind of like no way for me to win this game anymore. Like the only thing I can do is draw. And like if like and if we had unlimited time, we're never drawing. Like I'm always winning that game. It's just I don't know what people can do though. It's just like there's no real way to fix this issue.
Yeah, it's tough, and I think to some extent this will always exist. And I think just being I think just like being mindful of the clock in general is really important. Making sure that you have enough time, making sure that your opponent has enough time are both pretty important. And I also try to be like conscientious in this regard, where like if I know that I'm playing a little bit too slow and my opponent's on a fatigue plan, I will usually make a point of conceding the game when it does get to that point where I'm like clearly out of threats. You have to do it before time, so it's like it's tricky. But yeah, like that's like another thing that I think can make a big difference. Where it's like I think there are spots where people don't basically like don't concede or draw a game that they can't really win, and if they've also been playing slow, it's like you haven't technically done anything wrong, but it's like not. It doesn't feel great to sit across from, you know,
Yeah.
like I can think of like a high seas limited game where my opponent was playing quite slow and I had him out of cards, like completely out of cards in deck. He has an ally on board, but it costs resources to swing, and I have like cards in deck plus ally on board. So there's no out. Like I can just next turn I attack with my ally and he loses. But he just like chooses to block out, and then we draw, and then we both lose, and it's just like things like that. Like I think being aware of like, yeah, like you probably should get this win goes a long way, but and can be like something if you don't play fast enough, maybe something to think about is like I think that like sometimes these like fatiguey games get like a bad reputation, or people are like, oh, like there's almost like a stigma around fatigue, and you know, it's just as legitimate a strategy as anything else, even if you might not like how it feels to lose to it. So I think it's good to be considerate of that.
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of what you sign up for when you play some kind of fatigue game plan. So
Yeah.
I'm not complaining that much. Most people are pretty good about it, but
Yeah.
yeah. So you always run into someone who's not gonna concede, even if they're like completely out of cards, then on board. Like so.
Yeah.
I've definitely had my fair share of no day twos because of in Magic where my opponent I'm playing Lantern Control. My opponent has 0 cards in deck, zero like actual 0 actionable things, but they decided to look at the clock, wait for the timer to hit 0, then pass the turn, so I couldn't kill him.
Yeah.
It was the most outrageous thing I've seen in a card game tournament. Is they know the clock's running out, they know they're dead, they look at the time and decide to not pass the turn is the most outrageous thing ever. It's so crazy. But yeah, no, there's definitely I don't know, like it's so hard to fault them because like it's completely in their right to do so too. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, okay, yeah, okay, we'll wrap it up here. It's been quite a long episode now, and yeah, no sign off, we'll end it here.
Yeah, so thank you all for listening, and good luck to you in the new year. I guess you'll most likely be listening to this in the new year. We'll see. But yeah, best of luck to everyone in 2026. And if there are things that you'd like to hear about on the podcast, let us know. You can get in touch with us to do that on social media. Jay is at Ueda J on Twitter, and I'm at Yuki Lee Bender on Twitter, as well as Blue Sky. You can also email us at onthebobble@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us through our Patreon Discord. If you're interested in that, check us out at patreon.com/onthebobble. But yeah, that's about it. RTNs are starting in this weekend. So yeah, they're coming up soon, and best of luck to all of you in your RTNs.